When it comes to lighting modifiers, you've probably heard a lot of people talking about softboxes. They're an affordable and great way to make your light source larger and softer, and as a result, more flattering on your subject. That said, an issue that a lot of people might run into is figuring out exactly what size softbox they actually need for the type of stuff that they're going to be filming. So in this video, we're going to look at the differences between a 65cm, 90cm, and 120cm softbox in terms of the effect that they have on the overall lighting quality, as well as practical reasons why you might want to pick one over the other. So we're going to start things off with a hard light example that we can later use kind of as a base for comparison, and we don't have any diffusion in front of our light here. It's just a light with a reflector pointed straight at our subject. As you can probably tell, this doesn't look very flattering. The contrast ratio between the bright and dark areas of the subject's face is pretty high, the shadows are very sharp, and it just doesn't look great overall. It's not like using hard light is wrong by any means. There's definitely a lot of uses for it, but it is a lot more stylized, so it's definitely not gonna fit into every single project. So now if we move over to our 65cm softbox, you should be able to tell the difference right away. Because we're making the light source larger, it's going to give us a lot nicer of a light wrap on our subject's face. The lighting is softer, the contrast ratio is going to be lower, and the shadows aren't nearly as sharp as with the last example. If we put up both of the examples side by side, you should be able to clearly see the difference in how much work even just like a small softbox does for us, and it's pretty clear that the example on the right just looks a lot more flattering. Also, if we want to control how much of the light is spilling onto our background, we can use a grid attachment that a lot of softboxes nowadays are sold with, and this just allows us to focus the light a little bit more directly on our subject. And now if we hop over to our 90cm softbox, things are going to change a bit more. This time the differences might not necessarily be as noticeable, but if you look closely you should still be able to see them. The light is a little bit softer now, and because we're working with an even bigger light source, the contrast ratio is going to be lower and the light wrap is going to take away some more of the shadows. Comparing it to our hard light example from the start of the video, you can clearly tell how much nicer and more natural things look with a big 90cm softbox, but because it's also a bigger light source, we're going to be getting more light spill, so if we throw on a grid attachment on the front of it again, we can control where our light is going. And now we can set up our 120cm softbox to kind of see what it does for our lighting quality, but just keep in mind that the bigger your softbox is, the more powerful your light needs to be as well, because there's going to be a bigger surface area that you need to light, and if you don't have enough output, you're going to start dropping in exposure. So this thing is absolutely massive, so all of the effects that it produces are going to be much more pronounced than the previous two examples, and comparing it to our hard light example, it's just like completely night and day. Obviously, since this one is the biggest, there's also going to be the most light spilling on the background, and the issue with a softbox that's this huge is that even if you have a grid on the front of it, you can't fully focus the light just on your subject. So I'm gonna have all three of the softboxes up on screen so that you can see what the same shot looks like with each of them, and I'm not really sure about you, but I can definitely see the difference. And if I quickly just show you our hard light example from the start, you should be able to notice how much better things look regardless of what size softbox you go with. And as a bonus, here's a setup that we quickly put together with a white sheet of diffusion that we hung up on a C-stand, and then we blasted our light through, and I'm just saying that to be fancy, but in reality the sheet of diffusion was just a big white shower curtain that I got for $5 from a local store. The thing is, if I hadn't just told you that right now, I'm willing to bet that most of the people watching this probably wouldn't have thought about it at all. I mean, it's essentially the same as the 120cm softbox, but for the shower curtain, each side is like 180 centimeters, so it's actually even bigger. And even though all of the softboxes that I showed you so far have 2 layers of diffusion and the shower curtain is just 1 layer, you can still get some pretty good looking results from it. Plus, you can also throw it in front of any of the softboxes that we've talked about so far, and you can get an even softer light source. I'm not gonna spend any more time on this, but I just wanted to give you the idea to go out and pick up a cheap white shower curtain from a store if you haven't done that already, because it can definitely be a really useful and versatile addition to your lighting kit. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about some practical tips for choosing the right softbox, and the first thing we have to talk about is how much space you've actually got to work with. Obviously, the bigger the softbox, the wider it's going to be, but something that not a lot of people consider is that they also get deeper. So a 120 centimeter softbox is going to be much deeper than a 65 centimeter one. The reason this is important is because sometimes if you've picked up a deeper softbox, you might find that you can't really position it correctly and it just keeps getting in your frame. If you're working in like a big open studio, that's not really going to be too much of an issue, but if you're doing a lot of stuff at home or in a smaller space, it's something that you need to have in mind. For example, for all of my YouTube videos so far, I've been using a 65 centimeter softbox, and because the space where I film all of these is pretty small, that's a size that works for me. A while back, I was actually thinking of picking up a 90 centimeter softbox, but after measuring out how much space I've got to work with, I realized that it would probably get in my frame regardless of where I put it, so I just decided not to go with that one. Honestly, I would personally recommend that you invest into either a 65 or a 90 centimeter softbox, or if you've got the budget, you can just get both. Some people might disagree with me, but I personally think that 99% of people will never really need a 120 centimeter softbox, and you would just be better off getting like an extra large sheet of diffusion. Whether it's something as simple as a white shower curtain, or if you have a little bit more money, one of those 5-in-1 reflectors, it's definitely gonna be a lot easier and more convenient to work with than just a huge ass softbox. First of all, because it's gonna be much easier to travel around with. Secondly, it's gonna be more versatile because you can hang it up in weird places. And lastly, if you have one of the smaller softboxes, you can just put that extra sheet of diffusion in front of them to get a bigger and softer light source while saving on a bunch of space. Finally, as one last bonus tip, whenever you're buying a softbox, make sure to try and get one that has a quick setup mechanism, because while it might seem like you can save a little bit of money by getting one of those generic ones where you bend all of the metal rods into place and then you put all of the fabrics around them, that's a trap that you really don't want to fall into. All of the headaches and the frustration that you're gonna have to deal with are not gonna be worth the couple of bucks that you've saved, so if you go with a softbox that has a quick setup mechanism, and as long as you take care not to break it, you're going to thank yourself absolutely every time when you have to set it up or pack it back down after a shoot. So I hope after watching this you now have a bit of a better idea of how to find the right softbox for you. I know that a video like this would have been really helpful to me personally a few years ago, and I really hope that you found it useful as well. Hopefully I was able to explain everything in a way that was clear, but if you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below and I'll try to help out if I can. As always, thank you so much for watching until the end. Consider sticking around by subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.